What if I told you that the entire survival of the United Nations effort in the Korean War, and perhaps the very future of South Korea itself, hung by a thread so thin it was almost invisible? A thread held by a few thousand American soldiers, outgunned, outmaneuvered, fighting for their lives in a city they barely knew. It all started with a simple question for me. How did the United States, caught completely off guard, manage to halt the seemingly unstoppable North Korean advance in the summer of 1950? I started digging into the dusty archives of the Korean War's early days, expecting to uncover some brilliant, overarching strategic masterstroke. But what I found was far more complex and, frankly, far more brutal. It wasn't a grand plan. It was a series of desperate, bloody delaying actions, each one a gamble against impossible odds. And at the heart of this chaotic struggle, one date kept popping up, chillingly consistent. July 18, 1950, the Battle of Taejon. Imagine a map of the Korean peninsula in late June of 1950. A massive, menacing red arrow, representing the North Korean People's Army, is sweeping relentlessly south. Their Soviet-made T-34 tanks, formidable and almost invulnerable, were rolling virtually unopposed. Seoul, the capital, fell within days. The world watched stunned as a modern army seemed poised to conquer an entire nation. The United States, still reeling from the shock of the invasion, scrambled to deploy its closest available forces. That meant the 24th Infantry Division stationed in Japan. But here's the critical detail. These weren't hardened combat veterans. They were largely occupation troops, undertrained, under-equipped, and utterly unprepared for the kind of brutal, fast-moving war they were about to face. The more I dug, the more complex it became. This division, the 24th, was thrown straight into a meat grinder. Not to win battles, not yet. Their mission was devastatingly simple, yet agonizingly difficult. To bleed, to buy time, to slow down the North Korean juggernaut mile by painful mile, extracting a price for every inch of ground gained. They were sacrificial lambs sent to delay, to inflict casualties, to create enough friction so that a true defensive line, a crucial perimeter, could be established far to the south. They fought at Osan, then Chochiwon, then Chonan. Each time they took horrific casualties, fell back, but crucially, they extracted a price. They made the enemy pay. And then, battered and exhausted, they reached Taejon. This city, Taejon, was more than just a dot on a tactical map. Look at its position, a vital rail and road hub, a geographic choke point. If the North Koreans seized Taejon swiftly, their advance would accelerate exponentially. There would be nothing left to stop them from sweeping across the entire southern tip of the peninsula, pushing the UN forces into the sea. Major General William F. Dean, leading the decimated 24th Division, received the order, "Hold Taejon," for as long as humanly possible. What unfolded there was a brutal urban nightmare, a fight for survival compressed into days. American soldiers, often armed with bazookas that proved frustratingly ineffective against the thick armor of the T-34s, fought street by street, house by house. The fighting was intense, often devolving into desperate hand-to-hand combat amidst the rubble. Supplies dwindled, casualties mounted at an alarming rate. General Dean himself, a true leader, was reportedly on the front lines firing a bazooka at enemy tanks, a truly desperate act of leadership, bordering on suicidal. In the chaotic aftermath of the city's fall, disoriented and alone, he was captured, a symbolic end to a desperate stand. On the surface, the Battle of Taejon was an unmitigated disaster, a tactical defeat. Taejon fell. The 24th Division was decimated, its remnants conducting a chaotic, bloody retreat. It looked like a total collapse. But here's the twist, the incredible, almost unbelievable connection that changes everything we think we know about this battle. That desperate, bloody stand in Taejon, that tactical defeat, was in fact a strategic victory of immense, almost immeasurable proportions. Here's what I found. Those precious, agonizing days, the time bought by the sheer tenacity, the brutal sacrifice of those soldiers in Taejon, allowed something else to happen further south. While the 24th Division bled and died, other UN forces, fresh troops, desperately needed equipment, and vital supplies were able to establish what would become known as the Pusan Perimeter. Imagine those collapsing lines on the map. They were crumbling, disintegrating, until suddenly, after Taejon, they stopped. They formed a tight, defensible crescent around the crucial port city of Pusan. This small, yet incredibly vital foothold was the only place the UN forces could resupply, regroup, and ultimately launch their counteroffensive. Without the delaying action at Taejon, without that brutal last-ditch stand, the Pusan Perimeter simply would not have materialized. The North Koreans would have overrun the entire peninsula, and the Korean War as we know it would have ended very differently. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many critical moments in history, how many grand turning points are less about brilliant strategic masterstrokes and more about sheer, brutal, desperate courage in the face of impossible odds? How often does losing a battle actually, incredibly, win a war?
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more history daily.